Okay, folks, today on Pimp My Ditch Witch, we are going to be informally addressing a topic that just will not die. What is the topic, you ask? Grounding. More specifically, the premise that electricity is just trying, as if it has some sort of will, to take the least resistive path to ground. Well, I'm here to tell you today, if you still believe that, for some reason, stop it. Get some help. And today's video will be, like I said, informal, unscripted. I would like to make a more formal academic version of it in the future, but given my backlog of other high effort videos that are also turbo educational and I want to release, and given the frequency which I release them, and given the motivation that I possess to make those videos, which is pretty low at a lot of times, if it comes out this decade, consider yourselves lucky. I'd say sometime before 2036 it should come out, or 2040 at the latest. Which is kind of crazy that that's less than 15 years away. So make of that what you will. But anyways, I guess we'll just jump right into it. So I guess a question, we'll just attack this by asking a couple questions that should make this seem unreasonable now. In even the most stubborn of minds, well, that's a pipe dream. Some people are just going to believe whatever they want to believe, and I guess that's to their loss. But first one, that little thing, a neutral conductor, or as it's called in buildings, the grounded conductor. What's the point of that if we're just going to send the electricity to ground anyways? Right? Because picture this. What do I want to say? You know what? Let's just say this. Why don't we just send all the current down the grounded conductor and then just out the ground rod? If it's just trying to go to grounds. Can anyone answer that? In fact, why isn't all the electricity just going out the ground rod already? Because if you can recall, in internal systems, the neutral is bonded to the ground at hopefully one point. So that's there to facilitate the operation of circuit breakers clearing faults. But yeah, I don't know. It just seems like that connection there just sort of renders the grounded conductor unnecessary, because why don't we just use the grounding conductor to, send the current to the ground rod? Like, why? But I don't know. I don't know what it is, but there's the craziest thing. It's the craziest thing, that neutral conductor. Yeah, I don't know. It's what receives the current from the grounding conductor during a fault condition. It goes across that jumper. It goes, that way, not as opposed to the other way. Okay, grounded to grounding, or grounding to grounded, not the other way around. And the craziest thing, the neutral goes out of the, it goes past the bonding point even, because I guess I could see, it's more efficient to just run everything to one point for the return current and then run it to a ground rod. But no, it's craziest thing happens. The neutral conductor, secondary neutral conductor, goes out to the transformer, and in most cases is solidly bonded to the primary neutral conductor. Okay, it's not like the line conductor or whatever you want to call it, the phase. As addressed before, the phase only exists inside of, windings and, I guess, capacitors and all that. Otherwise, it's the line. Okay, the line conductor, primary and secondary side, are electrically isolated from each other, but magnetically coupled via a porous steel core. It's laminated to minimize eddy currents and all that, but nonetheless insulated from both sides effectively. But the neutral isn't. It's solidly connected, and then it goes back to at least its side of the substation transformer, and it might even, if you have like a grounded Y system for your sub-transmission lines, which I don't really know how common those are. I guess on ones that you can't really manage the load on each line as well as you want to, or balance it, whatever. I guess you would do a grounded neutral sub-transmission system. Again, I don't really know how many of those are out there. But it goes down this MGN line, multi-grounded neutral. So at least in Wisconsin, according to the National Electric Safety Code, at least 4 grounds a mile. And usually you'll just see a ground at every pole. And, it's like, well, why are those grounds there then if the electricity is trying to go to ground? Like, is the purpose of all this just to, I don't know, coax the electricity to go down the neutral, like trick it into thinking that that there's a path to ground, but there isn't, even though it's also solidly connected to the ground rod from the neutral. I don't know. And if what I said doesn't make sense to you, that's because your theories don't make sense, and I'm just trying to give a plausible explanation of nonsense. And it's garbage in, garbage out. So make of that what you will as well. And then as we get on to bigger systems, transmission systems and all that, most of them are ungrounded Y, but some older ones are still, or whatever you want, floating neutral Y, whatever you want to call them. But some older ones are still ungrounded delta. And for all the issues with lightning damage and all that, because you can only really protect from that with, lightning arresters that, it's isolated with semiconductor basically, or like an air gap or something. But you would notice in the control houses that unlike other systems, at least the grounded ones, these ungrounded delta systems have these ground fault relays, and the purpose of them is to shut off the system if just one line touches the ground. And you would think that if electricity is just chomping at the bit to get to ground, path of least resistance, a tree touching it or I don't know, maybe it was crappily installed and it fell off a couple insulator strings in a row and now it's just laying on the ground, or whatever causes just one line to touch the ground in this ungrounded delta transmission system. That should trip out the breaker because there should be a short circuit if just one is doing that. But it doesn't, barring some capacitive effect, which was discussed on another turbo educational video about why you shouldn't get shocked by a transmission line but still do. And I don't know if you know this, but it doesn't trip out. I don't know if I said that before. So what you do is you set up this zigzag transformer system. It was weird. I don't. Why do you need it to be? Why do you need a transformer that has a resistive or reactive path to ground, I guess is the more correct term. Why would you need that to measure whether or not a single line is touching the ground if electricity is just trying to go to ground and that should make a short circuit? Well, that's because it doesn't try to go to ground. It's trying to go back to the other side of the source. And you would see this if 2 or 3 of those lines faults out as well, then it'd be a short circuit. But you could just have that single line just sit and be faulted to earth just for decades, and in theory nothing would happen. In fact, an infinite amount of time and nothing would happen if we don't count real world variables. And so the purpose of that relay, of course, is to detect that just one is faulted out and it just trips the line off, even though there's basically no fault current coming from it. In fact, the presence of that relay in the zigzag transformer to measure that increased the fault current from practically 0 to some measurable amount. Is it because there's more paths to ground, that extra reactive path? Or is it perhaps because there's now a high reactivity path to the source? I mean, that sufficiently debunks this whole notion, I think. Another thing, this concerns more the least resistive path nonsense. I don't know if you know this, but electricity is not electrons moving per se. It's a wave propagating through electrons, and it's using the electrons as a medium. So, anywhere that the wave can make an effect, there's going to be a current flow. So, yeah, it'll take that least resistance path very happily, but it'll also take any other path that it comes across. Ohm's law applies here. Just because you've involved the ground, all these people, they know Ohm's law, they have it down, but I'm gonna spill my coffee. But as soon as ground becomes involved, magically it goes away. For Ohm's law, it just doesn't apply anymore for some weird reason that they're not really able to explain. But just coffee here. Okay, so there's that notion. But I don't know if you've ever seen a river, or even like how a wave on a lake or just a sound wave propagates. Is that taking the easiest path, or is it sort of taking all paths proportional to how easy, the resistance to its propagation? You know the answer to that. And it does not change just because ground's involved. So let me tell you something. If you measure any current flow through a ground rod ever, it's because it found a path back to the source through the ground rod, through the ground, because you know what the crazy thing is? If you go measure at the transformer ground rod, you'll find the same amount, Kirchhoff's law, unless it's just some crazy coincidence, you will find the same amount of current flowing on that grounds, what would you call it? Grounding electrode conductor. Okay? So, and that goes for the multi-ground and neutral too. There is some current flow going down there, but it all adds up in the wash if you tallied it up at some, if you put an ammeter, you know, just right on the single conductor leaving the transformer, the neutral conductor. Or at the very least, the internal conductor, if you're using the case as part of the neutral path. So there's that. And then finally, for now, just try a little experiment. And this comes from Mike Holt. This is not my idea, but take a maybe I added some modifications, but take a transformer, this little transformer, little CAN 1, 15 kVA or something, and you know, hook it up. You know, I guess if you don't have access to 7200 volts or 14.4 or whatever, just use a 1-to-1 transformer just so it's isolated. And just isolate this transformer from the ground, and just hook up to one of the line, or if it's center tapped, one of the hot conductors. And just go crazy with grounding. Like get the 10-foot ground, forget the 8-footers, get the 10-foot ground rods. Like, I don't know if you can find one that's made out of like silver or something, go for that. Use like the thickest 350 kc mil, 5000 kc mil if you can find that. Like, make like a big string of ground rods all around you, big grid, and CAD weld them to the ground rod. Anything to eliminate resistance and all those variables, and just have the transformer return path completely isolated from the ground. And click on the transformer, and you'll notice that the transformer doesn't explode. There isn't a fuse that blows. And if you measure the current, it's going to be, besides some like niche physics stuff that's happening, that you would only be able to tell with some like specialized lab grade equipment. You're going to read 0 for the current. So yeah, just don't waste your money. Just if you want to, you can, but I can tell you the result. Nothing's going to happen, assuming we've eliminated any return paths. And you can make a perfectly 0 ohm path, which in theory you should get an infinite amount of current, which I don't even know what that would look like. But yeah, even if you had a theoretically 0 ohm path, 0.0, nothing, because you know what? And you know what? Why don't you take a voltmeter, stick one probe in the ground, remote ground if you want to eliminate variables, which is 50 feet away from the transformer, and then get your meter calibrated even if you want. Get the little certificate and all that. Stick one end on one of the line or hot terminals, lugs, whatever. And notice that the voltage, besides some small capacitive coupling, which you won't be able to measure with a regular thing anyways, the voltage is 0. Which is crazy, because if you take that probe and you put it on the other side of the transformer secondary, it's going to be the full voltage. 240, 120, 480. Well, depends on how you configure it. It'd be 480. Yeah, I don't know. Explain that one. 0 times 0 is 0. And there's going to be 0 current going into the ground because it's not going to ground. And if you ever measure current going into the ground, it's because it has a reason to go there, some other reason that's not the ground. And it's just using the ground as a source, or as a return path to the source. That's how that works. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I guess if you want more context and all this, you can look at my other turbo educational videos. Yeah, at least the ones on this category of topics. But other than that, I don't know. By 2040, I'll probably have the more academic version of this put out, hopefully. Yeah. Other than that, it's been Pimp My Ditch Witch. Yeah, that is all.